Namaskar. Welcome to this session. We were considering the Vedantins' criticality to Sankhya's postulations or Sankhya philosophy. And we were seeing that the Sankhya originally is not Nirishwar Sankhya. The Sankhya that you get in Upanishads, Sankhya that you get in Mahabharata, Sankhya that you get in Shastras, Puranas, there is nothing called Anishwara Sankhya, Nirishwara Sankhya, and that is not possible at all. It is later Vedanta, post Brahmasutra Vedanta, where commentators came to interpret Brahmasutras of Badarayana. It is those who took a very severe critical stand. And as I said last time, yes, in Brahmasutras, Sankhya has been examined and has been criticized, but not condemned. There is no condemnation, but there is criticism to Sankhya tenets or the point of view of Sankhya. That is beyond doubt. Sankhya is being considered quite lengthily in Brahmasutras of Badarayana. Patanjalas also stand refuted. Since Sankhya was refuted, Patanjalas also stand refuted with that very well-known sutra, ntin Yogava pratyuktaha, which comes in second chapter, Smritipada of Brahmasutras. The point is, there is a room for confusion for those who are dedicated in Patanjali Yoga as to why Patanjali has been refuted. Because Sankhya has been refuted. Because Patanjali follows Sankhya. And therefore, Vyasa calls this commentary as Sankhya Pravachana Bhashyam, which is also known as Yoga Bhashyam. It is also Sankhya Pravachana Bhashyam. So the point is, those who are dedicated to yoga cannot take it, cannot swallow this, that the Brahmasutras have criticized Sankhya Patanjalas, or the Sankhya system which Patanjali embraces. So little clarification is again extended in this session. On one hand, we saw that Patanjali's Sankhya, or Patanjali as a Seshwar Sankhya, which later came to be known as, and then Ishwara Krishna's Sankhya as Nirishwara Sankhya. This was the point of view of commentators on Brahmasutras, starting from Srimad Adya Shankaracharya to all the commentators subsequently. So, we are going to unravel that riddle. So, today let me make it a opening statement that the Brahmasutras is the text embraced by Brahmavadins. So, Vedanta Darshanam, as it's known to be, is Darshanam of Brahmavadins, and Patanjali's Yoga Darshanam is of Prakrti Vadins, because Brahmavadins hold Brahma as the material cause of the universe, and the Sankhyas and Patanjalas postulate that it is Prakrti which is material cause of creation. Now, at the outset, let me tell you that the Brahmavadins of Vedanta Darshanam have profused deism. It commences with Brahmajinyasa, athato Brahmajinyasa. Now, therefore, inquiry into Brahman. And this is how the Vedanta Darshanam commences. Now, Brahman is such a principle that if you commence a very formal inquiry into Brahman, the result is going to be, one would be a Brahmopasaka. The Brahma would be Upasya, and one would become Brahmopasaka. It won't be mere inquiry into Brahman as to what is Brahman. So the very content of subject matter of the Vedanta Sutra is Brahman, and Brahman is such a principle that if you set inquiring in respect of that principle, the invariable consequence is that you are going to become a Brahmopasaka. You are going to become a Bhaktan. And this has been made clear by Vaishnava Vedanta. Brahmajinyasa cannot be just dry inquiry or investigative inquiry, like many inquiries are merely investigative. But Brahman is such a principle that if you really go into inquiry of it, you are going to become a devotee, you are going to become a Brahmopasaka, and you are going to embrace the Brahmopasana. And there are nearly 32 Brahma Vidyas for Brahmopasana. So, the Vaishnava Vedantis have this kind of dictum that inquiry into Brahman is invariably going to make you a devotee of divinity, and mere knowledge is not going to be a proper consequence. And if it is merely knowledge matter, that means the Brahmajinyasa is not fructified properly. If you do not become Brahmopasaka and do not do Brahmopasana and do not develop that bhakti, then that is insufficient inquiry or improper inquiry into Brahman. So, post Shankara, the commentators have definitely brought out this very important purport. Brahman is not just matter of inquiry, but if you set inquiring, you are invariably going to Brahmopasaka, and that is Bhaktan. So, Vedanta as is misconstrued in our times that it is Jnana Yogam, and then it is merely Jnana and Jnana. That is not proper. If the Jnana doesn't culminate into Bhakti, that Jnana is declared to be useless Jnana. That is just considered to be information. The Jnana invariably must transform and transmute into Bhakti. And therefore later we come across discussions in philosophical discourses that jnana without bhakti is lame, bhakti without jnana too is lame. Both are incomplete. There must be fusion of jnana and bhakti. Jnana must result into bhakti, and bhakti also must result into jnana. And the jnana is Brahmajnanam. So Brahmajnanam without bhakti is dry, meaningless, and it is just pulp with no substance. The bhakti similarly should have jnana. And therefore Bhagavad Gita, Bhagwan says that out of the four kinds of bhaktas, Jnani is the supreme bhakta. So Bhagavad Gita mentions four kinds of bhaktas are the Jignasu, Artharthi and Jnani. Precisely, Artha, Artharthi, Jignasu, Jnani. And the Jnani Bhakta is said to be exalted in the opinion of Bhagwan Sri Krishna himself. So therefore the point is the Jnana must culminate into Bhakti, and the Bhakti must be touched by Jnana. So this is the classical approach. Point is, Brahmasutras is not a treatise on Jnana Yoga, and if it is just going to end as a treatise on Jnana Yoga, it is going to be incomplete or improper inquiry. Anyway, so the Brahmavadins have profused deism, and deism something which is profused love for divinity. It is not just believing in God, believing in divinity, which is called theism or theistic mind, but this is deism. Deism means having overflowing bhakti, devotion for Brahma. Now, since Vedanta is having an appeal for bhakti, bhakta, and devotion, the devotion is so strong, it is therefore they are little critical about Sankhya-Patanjalas. Patanjali has bhakti in his treatise, and that is quite express. But there is no express deism in Patanjali's yoga. This should be admitted. Because Patanjali is aiming to find isolation for Purusha, bestow or give means, mention the measures and means for isolation of Purusha from Prakrti. And that is why it is Kaivalyam, isolation from Prakrti. So that is the Parama Purushartha of Patanjalas, that they want enfranchisement from the contact of the Prakrti Tattvam. And that is considered to be spiritual summum bonum in Prakrti, Patanjali's treatise. While the Vedantins head towards profused deism in their pursuit of inquiry into Brahman. So it should be accepted that the Patanjali practices or the sadhana mentioned by Patanjali or the means mentioned by Patanjali are to redeem oneself, to free oneself from the contact of Prakrti Tattvam. And for that purpose, Ishvara is taken as means, measures to be free from contact of Prakrti. While the Brahmavadins, being devotees, profuse devotees, their gravity is totally different. They end up declaring that, as Upanishads say, Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma. All this is Brahma. Purnamidam Purnamadam. This is also full, that is also full, this is also Brahman, that is also Brahman. So in their profused deism, they see the Brahman in even Prakrti. And that is why they have the gravity of certain mentions of scriptures and shastras. Vasudevam idam sarvam, Vishnumayam jagata. So they see the Vishnu, they see the Vasudeva in entire creation. It is because of their profused deism. Because they love the Brahma Tattva, their outlook is totally different. Like if a mortal is in love with a person, the defects are overlooked, or defects themselves become merits. Just because you love that person, the defect of that person is taken as meritorious. It is because of love. Love can do all those things. Without love, whatever qualities are there in the person would be taken as either positive or negative. But when the love factor is coming in, then everything gets colored by love, emotion of love. So the emotion of love is such a thing that Brahmavadins end up declaring all this is Brahman. Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma. Or Vasudevam Sarvam iti. Everything is Vasudevatmaka, Vasudevamaya. Because their love for Brahma Tattva is so much that they end up seeing Brahman everywhere. Or Vishnumayam idam jagata. The whole creation is seen as Vishnumayam, Vishnu profused. I recall that verse of Bhagavad Gita where the Samadrushti is mentioned, and it is actually Bhakti. Vidya Vinay Sampanne Brahmane Gavihastini Shuni Chaiva Shapake Cha Panditaha Samadarshanaha. Now why this that Samadarshana? Because everything is seen as Vasudeva, whether it is Vidya Vinay Sampanna Brahmin, a very noble soul, Gavi, cow, Hastini, elephant. So whether it is very, very noble Brahmin, here Brahmin is not with reference to the caste, it is Brahmavrutti, very noble, honest, merit-filled, quality-filled bhaktan. All noble qualities, Daivi Sampada, who is totally permeated by Daivi Sampada, subsumed by Daivi Sampada, mentioned in the 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. All those noble qualities, personification of all noble qualities, called Vidya Vinaya Sampanna Brahmana. and it is not reference to the caste. So such a noble person on one hand, on the other hand, be that a cow, be that an elephant, be that a dog, shuni chaiva shvapakecha, be that a chandala, the unscrupulous brute manifestation in a person, brutality manifestation in person, any person, absolutely low to absolutely high. Vidya Vinaya Sampanna means on the highest rung of human nature, and Chandala means on the lowest rung of the human nature, called Pariya. So be that Pariya or Vidya Vinaya Sampanna Brahmana, whether be that elephant or be that a dog, be that cow, he sees only Vasudeva in that, and therefore doesn't discriminate between them as highly or lowly. That is the Samadarshina. So here the Pandita is not as Pandita is understood in common man's parlance, a erudite, wise person, but one who has Vasudeva Drushti, Vishnumaya Drushti. So that is what happens in Brahmavadins. Brahmavadins develop such enormous love for Brahman Tattva that they start seeing Brahman everywhere. Now, such a devout devotee cannot tolerate the discrimination aspect which comes so importantly in Patanjala ethico-religious system. Viveka khyati. Viveka is to discriminate. So discrimination that Patanjalas hold high is not tolerated just because they are devotees of Brahma. And the Patanjalas are not seekers of God but seekers of Kaivalyam. This is the Darshana Bheda, which should be taken without any prejudice. This is the Darshana Bhedam, and therefore there will be something which will be criticized by Patanjalas in Vedanta Darshan, and something will be criticized by Vedantins in Patanjala Darshanam. It is because Darshana Bheda. Patanjalas want to discriminate which is Prakrti and which is Purusha, where is Prakrti and where is Purusha, which is profused Prakrti and which is Purusha. Atmanatma Vivekam. So discrimination is basis in Patanjali's system. Nitya Nitya Vivekam, Atmanatma Vivekam, Shuchi Ashuchi Vivekam, Sukha Dukha Avivekam. So there will be a Vivekam, and there will be a measure taken to counter any Avivekam. So Nitya Nitya Viveka, Atmanatma Viveka, Sukha Dukha Viveka, Papa Punya Viveka, Shuchi Ashuchi Viveka. So discrimination is sought after because what is there is Avivekam, Atmanatma Avivekam, Nitya Nitya Avivekam, Sukha Dukha Avivekam, Shuchi Ashuchi Avivekam. So absence of discrimination which is there because of the avidya which is infested is to be countered, and therefore the measures are taken for discrimination. While in the Vedanta Darshanam, Discrimination is not important. Discrimination is not taken on the anvil, but tracing Brahma everywhere is on the anvil. Tracing the Brahman everywhere is what is sought in Brahmopasana. Because the mention comes very often of the nature, Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma. So that's the Darshana Bheda. And because of Darshana Bheda, there is going to be some difference of opinion. Otherwise, there should have been only one Darshanam. Why there are 6 darshanas in the radius of Vedic postulations? Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, Vedanta, Mimamsa. Shad darshanas are there because they are having different inquiries and they have different perspectives about the reality. And therefore there is Darshana Bheda. And because of Darshana Bheda, there will be postulations and there will be Khandana Mandana aspects. And because of that, in Vedanta Darshanam of Badrayana, the Brahmasutras, the Sankhyas have been examined, Patanjalas have been examined, and of course they get the treatment that they should be getting from Brahmavadins. That is why Sankhya has been criticized, because Sankhya holds the Prakrti as the material cause of the universe. And Vedanta has another interpretation of that material cause which is not different. Material cause is same. But the material cause is also a form of Brahman. So material cause is form of Brahman. Because of their pure, profound deism, they see Brahman in Prakrti. So the material cause, they see Brahman. Instrumental cause, they see Brahman. Incidental cause, they see Brahman. So all kinds of causes, they will be citing Brahman. And that is why they are called Brahma Karanavadin. And the Brahma is all pervasive by very etymological meaning. Brahati. It is all pervasive. And therefore, they are citing Brahman in the Prakrti, which is material cause. Prakrti has been accepted as material cause even by Upanishads. The Shvetashvatara Upanishad has the triad, Bhokta Bhogya Preritaram. Like Patanjali, who holds Prakrti, Purusha and Ishvara, Shvetashvatara Upanishad also mentions Bhokta, Bhojya, Bhogyam and Preritaram. Bhogyam is Prakrti, Bhokta is Purusha Tattva, and Prerita is the inducer. So the Prakrti works because of the immanent Ishvara Tattva according to Patanjali. So if the Prakriti Paranama is going to take place from Avyakta to Lingamatra, Lingamatra to Avishesha and Avishesha to Vishesha, which we saw during the Sutra, the Antaryami of each of these principles is Brahman. Avyakta Antaryami, Alinga Antaryami, Lingamatra Antaryami, Avishesha Antaryami, Vishesha Antaryami. This is implied in Patanjali's text. So this is implied and impressed, while in Brahmasutras it is express and explicit. So the difference takes place because what is implied and what is expressed. And that is why the difference of opinion comes up, because what is implied in Patanjali's text and treatise is explicit in Vedanta of Brahmasutras. So it is to be justified that Brahmasutras Vedanta is critical about Patanjali's treatise of yoga. Because Patanjali is mentioning Purusha Vishesha, means is the Ishvara is Prakrti Antaryami and Purusha Antaryami and Sarva Antaryami, Prakrti Niyanta, Purusha Niyanta and Sarva Niyanta. And this is the stand which is taken in Sri Vaishnavism or Ramanuja Vedanta. So Prakrti, Patanjali, where Patanjali is having implied mention that is expressed in Sri Vaishnavism or Sri Ramanuja Vedanta, and that is why they are in counter positions. There is always a difference between what one means to say and what one says. Even if the things are identical, having said, that person scores merit, and not having said but implied, there is inferior merit. So, Bhadra and Vedanta says something and Patanjali implies the same. So, between the difference between implied and express is the matter which is taken for argument, and therefore, even if Patanjalis are implying that, they are not explicit about it, and that is why they are facing the criticism. And that has to be accepted. The point is, the Vedanta and Yoga are not absolutely with non-difference. There is a difference. And the difference is to be justified because it is darshana bhedam. A difference in very perspective. The Vedantins are tracing Brahman everywhere, and the Patanjalas are tracing Prakrti wherever, everywhere, and they are trying to get emancipated from Prakrti. So when they get emancipated from Prakrti, it implies that they will be in the Brahman. So this is Darshana Bheda, and therefore I am telling you that there is a difference, no doubt, and there should be difference. If there is no difference, then there should not be another Darshanam. Patanjalas are trying to save the Purusha Tattva which is sunk in Prakriti mire. So they are trying to uplift it and save the Purusha from Prakriti contact. Vedantins have some other ways and measures to give the Paramapada. So these are two different routes to same end. And there can be two routes, two paths to one destination. And therefore, when there are two paths, you will have different landmarks. You will have different description. Although you are ultimately reaching the same goal, you will have different description. Because you are reaching a destination by two possible paths. So one is going to see one kind of landmark and therefore will have one kind of description and experience, while the other one will have another kind of landmarks, another kind of description and another kind of experience. But ultimately they are going to go to the same destination. So like there are two ways to reach a destination. These are two ways to reach a destination. How Patanjala's reach is one way, and how the Brahmavadins reach is another way. This is how we have to reconcile. So I am giving you factors for reconciliation and not venturing to say that there is no difference at all in Upanishadic Brahmavidyas and Brahmavada and the Sankhya's Kaivalya Marga. The Sankhya's are looking for Kaivalya, and the Brahmavadins are looking for Paramapada. So there are different nomenclatures given to same destination. And then there are two separate and different paths, and therefore there are differences in experience in both the paths. What is experienced will be different. The way the journey takes place is different. Like we saw in that example, going to one destination, there might be a path which is going to go through mountain ranges, while the other one is going through the plains. Now, if you go through the path which goes through mountain ranges, you are going to get ghat sections. You are going to get that mountains and then finding way through the mountains. While the other route is through the plains, and therefore you may not even sight the mountain. So these are two different ways. That is what we have to understand. And Patanjali is mentioning implicitly what Vedanta is postulating expressly. That is also another factor to be considered. So where Brahmavadins are explicitly saying something, Patanjali is saying that implicitly. So the difference between implicit and explicit is again a matter on which there can be argumentations, and they are to be accepted. And then basically these are two different paths to reach the Paramapada, the spiritual samambonam. So for example, suppose Himalayas, the top of Himalayas is the destination of the nature of spiritual samambonam. Himalayas can be trekked from Indian subcontinent. So they will be trekking Himalayas from one side, while the same Himalayas can be trekked from China, which will go southwards, large scale Himalayas, while Indian subcontinent, they will travel northwards and will scale Himalayas. So what they see from Indian side, the Himalayas, there will be one kind of nature, and those who do the trekking from China, traveling southwardly and then scaling up Himalayas, they will have different landmarks. But ultimately both are going to reach the peak. But experience from Indian subcontinent will be one, and experience from China to reach the mountain top of Himalayas will be another. So similarly, we should understand here and reconcile here differences between Vedanta of Badarayana and Patanjalas. So I have given some matter for which there will be some comfort for the seekers in Patanjali's path, and they will be able to assimilate why Patanjali's yoga has been refuted in Badarayana's Brahmasutras, they will understand why the refutation has taken place, and therefore they will be able to reconcile. So I made little attempt here to address this issue. And I have made it clear that it is not that both are mentioning the same thing. One is Brahmavadi, the other one is Kaivalyavadi. One is going to take up yoga which is of Kaivalya, which is to Kaivalya Marga, and the others are going to take recourse to yoga which is Brahma Marga. They are going to head towards Brahma, and that is perfectly right for Brahmavadin to say that this is infinite, that is infinite, this is Brahman, that is Brahman. Now, Brahman is such a principle as it is transcendent and immanent principle. They see that in a material cause there is governance of Brahman, and in an instrumental cause there is governance of Brahman. In the incidental cause there is governance of Brahman. That is the centric principle. Brahman is a centric principle, and Patanjali's too accept this Ishvara as immanent principle in Prakrti Purusha both. But what is explicit in Brahmasutras could not be expressed explicit in yoga. Why is the last question that we have to now deal with. Why is it that Patanjalas could not postulate the same way? What was implied? Why it could not be explicit and express? Patanjali is mentioning yoga for all hierarchies. So the heya means rejectable, upadeya means acceptable. What is rejectable and acceptable to one on the lowest rung is one thing. And then once the sadhaka scales up, the heyo padeya would be changing. Brahmasutras are straight away mentioning heyo padeya for one on the highest rung. They are not dealing with rudimentary, raw, unprepared sadhakas. So Brahmopasana doesn't commence for any Tom, Dick and Harry. But yoga can commence for any Tom, Dick and Harry. So therefore, the Viveka becomes important in Patanjala sadhana. The Prakrti to be considered as Heyam becomes important. Because suppose Prakrti is also Brahman, that means objects are also Brahman. If the objects are Brahman, how are you going to go for Vairagya sadhana? The Brahma Vidyopasana commences after you have reached the peak Vairagya culture in you. Shad Sampatti Yukta, Shama Dama Titiksha, Jnana Vairagya Sukha Shanti Samadhan, Shadaishwarya Sampanna is only qualified for Brahmajinyasa. Therefore, Athato, Ataha, Brahmajinyasa. Whereas yoga, Atha Yoganushasanam. So there is no qualification as such. For Brahma Sutra, there is a qualification. And then at that qualification, a sadhaka is not childish. For child, you need to tell the child, don't do this, don't touch that, don't ever do it, don't ever touch it, keep yourself away. This has to be told to the child. Otherwise, the child is in danger. Whereas, for supremely qualified, you don't have to tell about do's and don'ts. So Vairagya is to be attained in yoga, and therefore the Viveka becomes, discrimination becomes that much important, and therefore discrimination between Prakrti and Purusha becomes so important. But in Brahma Vidya, the qualified one is already on such a rung, and therefore the sutra is now therefore inquiry into Brahman. Now means when, and then means what? That means he is already qualified, and therefore the discrimination doesn't gain importance. He is gone past discrimination because he is on such a higher rung. But in Patanjali system, it is for raw beginners, adhamadhikari. Patanjali is mentioning for adhamadhikari. Vedanta is not mentioned for adhamadhikari. And this is clear in the commentaries of Shankaracharya in the first Brahma Sutra. After you have attained something, a merit, particular level of merit, then you qualify for Brahmajinyasa. Whereas there is no such qualification needed in Patanjali system, and therefore discrimination becomes very important. Prakrti Purusha Viveka, Atma Viveka, Sukha Dukkha Viveka, Nitya Viveka, Dharma Viveka, Karma Viveka, Papa Punya Viveka. All these discriminations become very, very important. So discrimination is the master key, major process, foundation of Patanjali's yoga, and Brahmavadins are on a pedestal which is well beyond any discrimination ground. You don't have to discriminate. All that is gone past, all that is gone by. So difference in qualification is another factor for difference in philosophy. And this is also a matter to be noted. So Patanjali is not mentioning that there is Ishvara in Prakrti, but he says Purusha Vishesha. So that there is basis to inculcate Vairagya, give up so many things, not be deluded by so many things, not be in infatuation for so many things to be discarded, eliminated. And the Vairagya is only possible if you say that Prakrti is different than Purusha. Prakrti is different than Chaitanya. Prakrti is different than Purusha Vishesha. So that is why Patanjali has taken the stand that he should take, and that's perfect that he has taken. So I think sufficient basis have been provided for one to have thought process in proper way, so that there won't be any enigmas and no confusions, and clarity in understanding why Patanjali stands refuted in Brahmasutras. So the basis have been given to understand why it is refuted, and why Patanjali is not a Brahmavadi, and how he cannot be a Brahmavadi. If he is taking everyone with him, then we'll have to have different precepts. Brahmavadins are not taking everyone with themselves. The exalted one, Shat Sampatti Yukta. So after having had some qualification, then many pros and cons go away, do's and don'ts go away. That is what has happened in Brahmasutras and Vedanta Darshanam of Badrayanacharya. So I think that is enough matter for today's session. And I think that is enough delineation on this topic, which we did for a couple of sessions. The concept of Seshwar Sankhya, Nirishwar Sankhya, etc. So with that, we end the session today. Namaskar all of you.